I think we nailed it. Think about it.
We wanted to be Aerosmith, and we wrote a lot of lyrics that we thought were Aerosmith-esque. A lot of sexual innuendo, a lot of tongue-in-cheek,
A lot of drug and drinking.
a lot of drug references. You want to be witty, you want to be kind of smarmy, and
You want to kind of offend the older crowd, the establishment.
you want to offend folks.
People stand in line with a quarter to pay. So this is what drugs are supposed to do. Make you end up like a freak locked up inside a zoo. How they find you all along the way.
Yeah. Bill Sheerin played rhythm guitar. Wrote some music.
Dennis Foley, lead vocalist.
My name is Jim Dennis, and I was the lead guitar player in Snidely Whiplash.
Joseph F. McCarthy Jr. And I started playing bass or guitar.
My name is Al Conan. I'm from Dorchester, then Quincy.
Tom Sheerin. Bill is my brother, and I was the #1 fan and a roadie.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming down. We're Snidely Whiplash. Thank you very much. This is gonna be our first tune. Okay, the first one we're gonna play is gonna be our first tune.
Best of all cities, really, except for maybe New York City, LA, but Boston during that time period had so many great rock clubs.
Well, especially in the 80s. In the 80s, that there was this thing called New Wave that came out in the early 80s, and Boston had a station, WBCN, that was really on the cusp of that.
This is
And,
WBCN, Boston.
So I think that because of BCN, and Boston had this scene. It had a scene. It had a new wave scene, and a lot of big bands that came out of that. I mean, early '80s. Bands like Throwing Muses or Buffalo Tom, or there were plenty of bands that were in that scene that made that scene very viable.
Not only that, but there were so many local bands and so many clubs that catered to them that every night somewhere there was always some show you could go to, some band putting on some crazy
absolutely.
Performance from...
And there were clubs. There were actually really good clubs in the city.
Fun clubs.
I mean, there were like 4 or 5 really good clubs that you could play at in the city if you were just a regular Joe Schmo band like us.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was thinking about is that it was really a great time. It was a great time to be an original band because no matter what type of music you played, you could find a place to play.
Yeah.
Or places to play. If you were an original band, I mean, there were so many clubs around, and they had live music, original live music, 7 nights a week.
We were definitely inspired by Aerosmith, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin. Those were our three. Those are the bands we wanted to be like.
That would be the very first,
right?
The beginnings of our influencing, and luckily for us, we were around during what I would say was the last real rock and roll movement in the music industry, which was that grunge movement out in Seattle. And there was a lot of great bands that came out of that, and there was a lot of great live music that came out of that.
That's right. We started picking up Soundgarden.
Yeah, Soundgarden and James Addiction. Early on, like right around 87, 88, 88, I got to hang around with these guys in this band called Hullabaloo. To say that they were our influence would be incorrect. They weren't our influence. But they influenced me in a lot of other ways outside of just the music. Like, I mean, basically they influenced me in the way that I was going to book the band. They influenced me in the way I was going to make flyers. They influenced me in... and they influenced me in the kind of music I loved. I loved punk rock.
Didn't they open for Nirvana at one time?
They sure did.
They opened for Nirvana, these guys.
And I mean, Nirvana came and played at Green Street.
That's right.
The group of us that were kind of together were very much into... Van Halen was a big one, AC/DC, some of that late 80s, early 90s hard rock, and that was kind of how they modeled what they played. It was very drum heavy, had some great guitar solos. It was a very heavy brand of rock.
Snidely was happening at the end of the greatest time in Boston music history. There was so many good acts, but what separated Snidely from a lot of bands, and probably what kept my interest and made it fun to videotape, is that they had two guitarists and bassists. They didn't just stand there and play their instrument. Dennis wasn't the lead singer who was the only one moving on the stage. Each person almost had their territory, and they each had their own performance style. And it made sense that Den and Bill were kind of the heart of the band, because every time I think of the band, I think of those two center stage. When Bill sang backup, he's on mic with Den. And they just lived in the center of that stage.
We like to be hair and skin and sweat. That was a big look of ours, just like Aerosmith.
I mean, there wasn't anything organized about it, that's for sure.
Well, we had, I'll tell you what, I had a pair of shorts or a pair of pants that were like my stage ones. I had a shirt or a couple of shirts that were like my stage shirts that I liked the way they fit, had no sleeves or whatever. You had the pants with the pot leaf sewn on the front because you wore them in that picture there. Yeah.
I remember me and you and Joe sitting up in the attic of your parents' place, doing what we normally would do. We just started throwing it around. I definitely remember Dangerous Dan was one of the names that got thrown out there. We got locked into cartoon characters at some point.
Yeah.
We got locked into it.
Yeah, I don't remember why. I just remember that we thought that Snidely was a real villainous character, more so than your average villain.
No, Snidely Whiplash. Do not foreclose the mortgage. We will be homeless, forced to wander about this cold Canadian countryside.
You should have thought of that when you signed the mortgage. You people are going to have to learn to read the small print.
In a couple of shows, he's literally trying to murder Dudley Do-Right.
Yeah.
He's got a scope rifle. He's shooting at him. That's not your average cartoon villain. Or he's tying Nell to the train track so she'll get run over by a train, which was a common theme. But it was also oh my God, he's.
I think that was the deciding factor, was that
he was
evil. It was okay to have, we weren't sure about the cartoon character. We weren't sure. But knowing that this cartoon character was a bad guy,
right,
made it okay.
So typically, because Snidely was a huge, Rosendale, local Rosendale band. It was all of our friends, and they were wild. Most nights, they were super energetic, a lot of fun. You know, we'd be singing along with the band and jumping around and having a great time. When they had a really good show and we had a really good following, you couldn't have any more fun. It was, you knew everybody there and everybody was partying.
And we had a core group of friends, our pub friends, who would come to every show. We could count on maybe a 50 draw, no matter where we played, probably.
Yeah, I would say that if we were going to be counting, bringing our Rozzy friends, our Rozzy group, to a location that we knew other people that knew us were going to be at, yeah, I'd say 50. It would either be the Channel of Unraggies in terms of the first club we played at. We played a lot of parties. We played, in a lot of backyards and maybe even a couple of Knights of Columbus halls.
Right in the middle of Rosendale Square, too.
Yeah. In terms of the kind of clubs that we played at, though, I mean, we played at the Rat, which I liked. We played at
Atlantic Lounge, we played out a lot on the weekends.
Right, and the Rock Pile. The Rock Pile, they really liked us at the Rock Pile a lot. And then Lansdowne Street, a place called Axis.
Yeah.
And I think that we did very well at Axis.
No bar.
The first place was the BRS down in Harrison Ave.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that place was scary.
Then there was the Fenway Park one.
Yep. So the New England Conservatory is a big music school, a big classical music school where Dennis worked. He worked the stage there, but we were also able to record music there and rehearse there. It was right downtown on Huntington Ave, right by the Symphony.
I mean, this is the New England Conservatory of Music. I mean, this is one of the most world-renowned classical music schools.
So we'd go in there and throw down some heavy metal.
We'd go in there and play garage rock.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then the Rock Pile contest. Part of the winnings of that contest was 3 free months at a rehearsal space, but it was in Malden.
Right.
And it was the middle of the summer.
Right.
And it was the hottest rehearsal space in the world.
Oh my gosh.
But since we would have to drive all the way to Malden to rehearse, we'd rehearse for hours because when else are we going to get there, right?
We wrote some of our coolest shit
We did write some of our best stuff there, man. That was actually a really fun space.
That was a fun
It was just inconvenient to get.
I mean, it was, Dennis lived in my house. Obviously Bill was my brother. Joe McCarthy, we grew up with Joe. I didn't really know Jim Dennis that well. We didn't have that big a relationship because he was more friends with Billy and Dennis. And Tonto was just a wild one. So, yeah, every time there was a show, we wound up closing out a club and then finding some place to go afterwards, or just going back in the van and parking somewhere. It was, we did a lot of that.
I think you know what we're doing. I'll see you later.
So the van ended up being sold to Dennis by my dad for like $1. Mm-hmm. And then we used it to go, that was Dennis's car, basically, but it was also the band's transportation. It was my dad's old painting van. It was a 40 Econoline. It was burgundy colored. It had just 2 seats in the front.
It was, it became a rolling clubhouse. It was one of those things where it started as just getting the equipment to and from the club, and then my dad kind of handed it over to us, and we just made it into something that was a little more exciting for us.
We definitely had our problems with the van. I remember a lot of road trips or going to gigs or things like that, or we were all going out to a club to see another band or a concert, and there'd be some kind of problem with the van, you know what I mean? It was just your classic, just keep. It's amazing that it got us where we were going.
I had taken it upon myself one day to just call in during the day to AAF because I had been told that there are local music shows at these radio stations, and what you want to do is make sure you contact the DJ that's running the local music show, get them your tape, and they'll play it, and you can just deal with them. And I thought to myself, like, okay, but what's to stop me from just giving a call to the DJ during the day, just see what he says? So I called in. I just cold called. And it was just so happened to be Kid Mitchell. And I told him, hey, I'm in a band, Snidely Whiplash, we do this, we do that. I started explaining my music, and he was like, wow. He's like, that sounds great.
I remember that. You came the last time.
It's this one.
No, this one. Yeah, you came the last time. We parked over there and raised some hell.
So we to go back to the sports bar after, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. You bust that out when we were in there, Al?
Yeah, you did. It's when the
You
show.
gotta watch his tape. It's gonna get me in trouble.
Open the doors.
Maybe it takes a second or two. Relax.
Maybe like the rings.
Yeah, they might have to.
Maybe we have to just raise some hell.
What did it say? Well, let me see the numbers. Hello.
Ah, we got a green. We got a green. Ah,
Yeah,
we got a green. Huh?
We got a green.
Take it on. They look at it. Oh, shit. It's all right. Oh, nice. Huh? Well, this is it, yes. I'm gonna have to get used to, like, coming to Worcester, I have a feeling.
Yep. This is the town.
That definitely means a new truck.
So we talked
Yeah, but I mean, we need the money for it.
Well, we will have.
Hey, I know what we can do. We can all go on the bike ride and raise some money for the...
With them. I'm not with them.
Pardon me, excuse me.
Excuse me, but hey.
Excuse me, pardon me.
Oh.
D-D-H-E-B-K. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I like get some of this. We're going in this nice shit.
How you doing, man?
This-
Awesome shirt, man. Face no more.
Turn it nice.
Definitely.
Snidely Whiplash.
Number uno. Numero.
We just really didn't know how to control ourselves.
The cool thing about that was that AAF had a really engaged local show that brought in live bands, that promoted local bands, promoted your local shows and clubs, and we really got seen and heard by a lot of people because of that. And we were the #1 song, June, July, August of 1991, and that was, I think, for us was probably
that was a huge deal.
Peak.
Yeah, that was a huge deal.
And AAF was a big.
Well,
part of that.
91 was a peak for us. Snidely Whiplash, that was a peak for us.
But AAF was like a big part of helping us with that.
We won the contest.
Yeah. It gave us legitimacy.
We got that.
This is the production studio. We do production here.
Awesome. It's my friend Al, by the way. Reagan.
Nice to meet you, Al. How to insert a cart properly. Are you watching? You getting this? You got the zoom in? All right. You push it in. All right. And see that little red button? For all you viewers out there watching. You push the red button in the queue.
I could use a sip of water. Is there a fucking water bottle around here?
Hi, Mom.
Dude, you come back, man. The party's playing. Jim's bad. He is fucking bad.
Played at the West Roxbury pub on Center Street, which was not a place that typically had bands, or if they did, it was like a 3-piece acoustic.
Yeah, it wasn't us.
That would play in a little corner like this. But we were a 5-piece band, and Joey Ammo got up and played with us too. So we were more like a 6-piece band. And we played one night, so the West Rock Free Pub is right in our neighborhood. So we drew in hundreds of people for that show.
As far as I understand, there was a line around the place.
Yes. Down the street.
That the line was there all night, even after the place ran out of beer.
Yeah.
Place ran out of beer, there was still people in line to come into the shop.
I'll never forget the barbacks, they ran out of beer. The bartenders sent them across the street to Blanchard's to buy a bunch of cases of Budweiser and restock the bar.
And there was some booze or wine or something like
because
that.
Because our friends drank every bottle of beer in the whole place.
Yeah.
A lot of that might have had to do with me. We did that a couple of times in different places. I think Green Street Station was one of the places that we did that. And it was, as bad as it was, drinking it out, it was even worse because they only had the Rolling Rock, which was just terrible. So.
And then this is an extreme case, I think. You know, we're talking about, so this is our hometown, we're playing, we've been around for a good couple of years already, everybody knew us. No matter where I went, I could go into just about any of those clubs that we have already played at and walk in, and even up in the North Shore and be like, hey, I want to book a show. Sure, you know, and you know, how much you want, and you know, that kind of stuff. Nobody would fight me because they knew that, all right, say we only brought in 20 people. Those 20 people could drink most of your bottle. and that was the reputation that we had. We had a reputation for having a good drinking crowd.
How that happened, I suspect that Dennis was our mostly promoter and booker, so Dennis and Jim knew the guys from Powerman 5000, and the drummer of Powerman 5000 is the brother of Rob Zombie. Do I have that right?
Right.
So somehow the gig
I think they played too, didn't
yeah,
they play?
did. We were the opener.
We opened.
Then it was Powerman.
We opened
and
for
then
Powerman.
It was Zombie.
and
it was at Access.
Right, and it was Spider Zombie. Spider was the lead singer, the front man for Powerman. That was Rob Zombie's brother.
Right.
And
Jim and you were friends with those guys.
Well, we knew Al. Al Pahanis was the drummer for Powerman.
Okay, that's how it is.
So we knew that, but that's not how we got the gig. That's not how we got the gig.
I don't remember how we got the gig.
No, I think we fell into that gig where I want to say that someone like Tin Pan Alley or something like that was supposed to be involved, but they didn't.
So my favorite memories of that was, opening obviously playing on the same bill as Powerman and Zombie, having a rehearsal, a dressing room, 2 cases of beer on ice in our room, which no club gave you cases of beer on ice. Like,
see, there's something about this that you just don't remember, or maybe you just never got told. I don't know.
What?
We got in trouble for that.
For what?
That was not our beer.
What? They gave us a room and beer.
That was not our beer. We drank it. Yeah. We always drink beer. There's beer. What the hell? We're going to drink it. We always drink beer.
Whose beer was it?
White Zombies, dude. We drank their fucking beer.
What?
That's right. We were there early because we had a rehearsal space way up there. So we were there early. So we get in there early. And we're like, oh, we want to set up and, and they're like, oh, it's going to take some time. Going to backline all these other bands first. Just put your stuff over there. Go on upstairs. Hang out in the dressing room. So we thought they gave us a dressing room. They did not give us a dressing room. See, nobody else knew this. See, these are the things. Like, I was the guy who was like the manager, okay?
So I'm the lead singer, I'm in the band, I can have fun. But then I got to go deal with these stupid club owners afterwards.
Wait, no, man. I don't remember any of that.
Yes. I remember drinking the beer. Yes. I know you did. And I guess I never told you guys or something, but no, we got in big trouble for that.
Really?
They were pissed. Because they then had to give 2 more cases to White Zombie, and they kicked us out and said we couldn't hang out in the dressing room anymore.
Remember the dressing room had like a time limit, and that
they kicked us out and said we couldn't hang in the dressing room anymore, and that's why we never met them. But we did meet the guys from Power Man.
Yeah, I remember
because they were actually up there drinking with us too.
Which is how we met.
And I think they called us on it.
No, that's how we met Henry. We didn't meet him, but that's how we saw Henry Rollins. He was hanging out with those dudes.
I think I want to say that the guys in Power Man gave us shit. Not like, oh, you guys suck, but like, I don't think you're supposed to be drinking that beer. I think that's what they would say to us. Oftentimes, we'd finish the show. So we'd play our set. But as soon as we're done playing our set, it's like, let's go have fun, So these guys, once the gear's off the stage, even if it's not in the van yet, I mean, they can just take the gear off the stage, like 5 feet off of the stage, and then they're off running around having fun. And I gotta go talk to the freaking club owner. I gotta go talk to and see what kind of trouble we're in. Because we got in trouble a lot.
This is Dennis Foley from Snidely Whiplash, and you're rocking it live with Johnny D, WBRS Brandeis Radio.
I want to say that 91, probably.
Yeah, I'd say 91.
Not
summer of 91.
Not necessarily the Rock Pile show, but somewhere between the Rock Pile show and when we released the CD in December. So we had the show in June.
Yep.
So somewhere between that June and that December was the period that we experienced, as far as Snidely Whiplash was concerned, the height of our popularity.
I think that was the summer that I let myself really think about the possibility that we could be a professional band. Like, I could do this. Like, we could be there. Like, we could make money off this. We could make this our careers, at least for a little while. But I think you're right. I think the summer of 91, we were on the radio, we were in the contest.
Right, we were number 1 on the radio that whole summer.
We were, everybody knew us, and people were asking us to be on their gigs.
Although, I mean,
we got invited
our popularity continued to get better and better.
Part of that was we got invited to be part of the Boston Get Stoned project, which was a bunch of Boston bands covering the Rolling Stones, and the record was produced by the Rolling Stones producer Jimmy Miller.
Who liked our version a lot.
He liked our version of Star Star.
There was a place in Saugus called the Rock Pile. It was a club that was on the backside of a club complex on Route 1 in Saugus. They played there a few times. But the channel was a really big one. You could put a lot of people in there. They had a very high stage. And it was a lot of fun to play there because they would have 2, 3, 4 bands going on a night, and everybody had their own dressing room, so it was a pretty decent sized club.
There was also another really fast, high energy song that we had called Sick and Tired. I really like that song. That's a song we worked on. We worked really hard on that song. Well, the first time we played that song was at the Rock Pile Battle of the Bands that we won.
That's right.
Where Kevin, the sax player, came up and played the Rolling Stones song with us.
That's right. I did love that song.
So we actually premiered a brand new song that we had never played live before during a Battle of the Bands final.
That we won.
And we ended up winning.
We ended up winning. Look, I got the freaking thing right here, dude.
You still have it.
1991.
Yeah.
Rock Pile winner. Look at the top of it. It's got like a big music thing on it.
Yeah.
This Tonto had this all the time. But when we went up there, Terry insisted that I take it. So
It's here in my little basement area here. It's,
The band that we beat in the finals, the guitar player and the drummer of that band ended up joining up with us.
That's right.
And Snidely Whiplash morphed into like a different band that we ended up calling Dangle.
Dennis went back to California. Tonto left.
Not yet. No.
Well, the Dangle thing.
I was living with you guys when you guys were in Dangle.
But you were on your way out. You were working 3 jobs and trying to earn money to blow town.
Okay, but I hadn't left yet.
No.
I mean, I don't even know if I made plans yet to leave. I mean, you guys were doing your Dangle thing.
So Dangle was... Dennis had left, Tonto had left, and we replaced them with the singer and drummer from Shy Boy, which was the band that we beat.
But as far as that
contest,
as far as that name goes, Dangle, I take no responsibility.
I can tell you about that
whatsoever.
Although he wasn't in the group, the Dangle name was an easy one. We didn't have a name. We had a gig at the Atlantic Lounge. They had a marquee outside. We were opening for a band that was called. Yes, Free Ballin'. So up in the marquee it said Free Ballin' and we were like, well, what would look hilarious up there? So we picked Dangle just because it would look so funny to have the marquee say Free Ballin' and Dangle.
Hysterical.
So we told the owners of the club that we were Dangle. They put it up on the marquee. We got our laugh. But after the show, we got booked to another show right away, and they were like, well, what do we call you? We were like, Dangle, I guess. And
wow.
So we became Dangle by accident because we put it up there as a joke just to see the marquee, and then we got booked, and then we had to keep the name.
See, that would have been the kind of thing that I would have kept them from doing. Like that, they would have loved to have done that to Snidely Whiplash.
That's true.
Jim would have loved to do that to Snidely
Dan would have had more future vision.
And I would have been like, no.
Yeah, you would have been like,
no
that's
way.
going to bite you.
It's never going to happen.
Although it was fun to see it up on the marquee.
I'm sure. Did you get a picture?
We didn't have cell phones.
You didn't even get a picture. Sick. But you get the memory.
Free balling. We struggled very hard to find a replacement name. We all didn't want to lose Snidely Whiplash. We all loved it, but we knew we had to. If I remember correctly...
I'm not going to take responsibility for that.
If I remember correctly, we all threw out names. We had like a couple of sessions of name suggestions where we were like looking in encyclopedias, pulling out crazy names.
I think that happened without me. I don't think I was there for that.
But Motherlode...
I can't... Jim and Bill came up to me with Motherlode.
Jim
it was Motherlode.
Jim liked Motherlode better than some of the other alternatives. And I think it was, again, one of these things where, like, we had to have a name because we had shows coming up and we needed to promote ourselves and we needed to have a name.
I was against that name.
So Motherlode...
But it was better than any of the others.
Motherlode was an alternative that we chose out of a bunch of not great options. It was hard to name your band back then.
I just didn't want us to change. I didn't want to change from Snidely Whiplash. I knew that whatever kind of trouble we might get into with the name was going to be far outweighed by the popularity of the band. I knew that was one, and John Horton didn't want it, and he had a good case because Sega got sued, and they ended up getting all. They had a record deal that got screwed up because of it, and I didn't want that, so I was like, okay, fine.
Well, I didn't want to lose the name. I had it already tattooed on my shoulder. I was committed.
Unfortunately, and this is the honest to God truth of the matter. I had been doing the business too long. I had been running the business of the band for too long. So when I started talking to John Horton about things like changing the name of the band, I disagreed with him about a lot of stuff. And I was right. He never got signed. We never went through the process of signing a contract.
We signed something.
We never signed a contract with him. That never happened. We never signed a contract.
We recorded with them.
We did record with them. But what was going on was this. We were recording, so he was paying for all the studio time. Okay? He wasn't paying us for anything.
No, but I think we signed an agreement to record X number of songs for his label.
We signed a release. We signed a thing that's saying that if we record something that he wants to be able to release, he can release it. That's what we signed. We didn't sign a contract with him for us making any money off of recording.
Oh, I never thought we were making any money off him, but I thought he was going to put out our record.
That's the purpose of a contract.
Yeah, but he was putting out our record.
That never materialized. That never turned.
Well, because we never finished the recordings.
So my understanding with John Horton was that he had 20 hours of recording time that he thought he could stick us into and record an album, which was never gonna happen. That was just never gonna happen. And so I want to say ahead of time I said something, maybe not. But I know this: when we got out there and we recorded all the basics and we were done with our time, he came up to me and he was just like, "I don't understand what's going on." And I was like, "All right, two things. First of all, I knew we weren't going to get 8 songs done in 20 hours. Second of all, you did not provide us with our number one guy to get stuff done. You know, you bring Mr. Barry, you bring in Mr. Beautiful right now, we'll get it all done in no time. You know, you stuck us into a situation that we're unfamiliar with. You made us record in an environment that we're unfamiliar with, and you're having us mix everything down in an unfamiliar environment. There's no way we're going to get that done."
We wrap up our 20 hours. We don't finish the tracks. And in between the next session...
No, he bought more time.
But Tonto ended up flaking before that ever happened.
Well, he bought 20 hours, but it didn't matter. We didn't need Tonto at that point. He had bought 20 more hours. And that's what allowed us to finish... What was the thing that they put on Crush?
Brain Decay.
Well, Brain Decay was on the big gig tape. No, I'm talking about what was on the Crush CD. Was Hit Me. Right. So we finished that. Finished Hit Me. We finished Brain Decay. I want to say that we finished. Did we finish another song? Maybe not. Maybe those were the only 2 things that we finished.
I don't recall much finished.
And we did rough mixes of all the other stuff, and we couldn't do Soul's Mind. Remember, we couldn't do Soul's Mind because they junked it because of the stupid way we recorded with the drums. So we only ended up with 7 songs, 2 of which were finished, and 5 of which were kind of rough.
But we never finished anything because we never stayed together long enough to make that happen.
Well, I mean, like I said, we definitely finished.
Right, but no record came out. There were a lot of fractures. There were a lot of fractures that began to happen. There was a lot of substance abuse happening that probably contributed to some of our issues within the group. There were 5 of us, so that's a lot of clashing personalities, a lot of egos. We all sort of had our ideas and visions about where things wanted to go, and that's the type of stuff that after a few years, that friction can start to cause fractures. I mean, Dennis and I went back and forth a bunch of times where we would fight and then be pals and then fight and then be pals.
We were roommates.
Right.
And we had already just spent like 2 or 3 years living basically in the same space. So there was that, and we were in a band together, and we had to deal with that.
There was some issues that started to happen with Joe started to have his girlfriend and him really had a really different view of where they wanted us to go, and Joe and Tonto had a big falling out.
Yep.
That really was like kind of the end there, where Joe just wasn't going to play in the same band with Tonto any longer, and Tonto and Terry left town.
Well, that was a hard thing for us because we got Tonto, and Tonto in a lot of ways was like the answer to our problems. He was a great drummer, great presence. People would come see us to see him.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I think what goes on is, as time goes on and, personality conflicts occur, we're all getting a little bit older, we've been hanging around with each other, and, whatever was a small conflict maybe 2 or 3 years ago is now not such a small conflict. And I think that a lot of people getting on edge with each other.
Getting on each other's
And,
nerves.
I'll say for myself personally, as much as I might have had that with Bill, that would have been in our home. That would have been where we lived. I don't think we had a lot of disagreements about the band, per se. Me and Jim did. And maybe some of the disagreements we had something to do with Jim. Well, another thing that was going on, too, that maybe you were not as aware of, would be that we were starting to write complex stuff. The stuff we were starting to write was really starting to be ahead of ourselves. We were starting to write some stuff that, at that point, even in 92, by September of '92, we've only been together, the five of us, for 3 years. The music we were writing was really starting to get ahead of ourselves. At least that's how I felt. I felt as though we were starting to write music that was ahead of me and what I could really do. I wasn't someone that went to school for singing, even though I did take some lessons. I wasn't that great of a singer. I didn't control my vocals that well back then. And I would hurt myself. There were times when I would like just have this raging headache.
Yep, you'd get migraines.
I couldn't stand it. It was getting bad.
I do remember.
And a lot of it had to do with my inability to relocate my breathing the right way, and it hurt the songs. It hurt the songs. There were some songs there that I could never get a handle on, like Unpaid Bills. I could never really get a handle on that song. You know, there were 2 or 3 songs that we were starting to write in '92 that were just, it was ahead of me.
There was a lot, so that was like one of many factors too, because, you know, Jim, I think, wanted to have some other options.
What?
Joe and Tonto were no longer really viable, getting along any longer. And, you know, them being the rhythm section, if they don't lock, it's a big problem, you know, and Joe just wasn't having it anymore.
You know, there we are, you know, I'm starting to feel a little self-conscious about my ability to keep doing the vocals the right way, and Tonto, by all intents and purposes, really on his way out of the band at that point, and then he's out. He's out of the band. He's no longer in the band, and now it's, you know, me and Joe and Bill and Jim, and we did have someone to fall back on. I mean, we had a reputation. We had drummers that were psyched to come and play with us.
Yeah.
And so we had a guy that we really liked from years before that we wanted to bring in, and I don't even know if he was bad, as much as it didn't work.
Right. The chemistry was gone.
It just didn't work. But I don't even know if that was his fault. No. I have a feeling that it was really our fault. I think our chemistry was already kind of going.
Well, because a lot of it was original music that, you know, Tonto was part of writing, and, you know, it's just different when some other musicians trying to, like, play songs that you've written. There's not, the chemistry doesn't exist the way it did with the original guy, and like the scene was also starting to evolve and change.
Clubs were going. Clubs were
starting to go. The Channel was gone.
No
Bun Ratties was gone.
Yeah, no more Bun Ratties, no more Channel, no more Green Streets, you know.
So like those things were changing too, where the scene was becoming a lot more fragmented.
And I think we were getting very sick of doing stuff like no bozos gigs and stuff like that. So I think that by and large, by the end of '92, between the scene changing, because it definitely was, and
internal
we were changing. We were changing. Yeah. We were changing. I was changing. And I was changing from the type of person that, you know, 3 years earlier, if I had sat there and thought, oh, well, my vocals really aren't up to shape, I would say, I'm going to get better at it. I would work harder at the vocals to be better at being a vocals. As opposed to 3 years later, I'm sitting there, we're writing songs like Unpaid Bills, and I'm just like almost throwing my hands up in the air saying, I don't think I can do this.
And last, but by no means least, our favorite drummer, Mr. John Taranto.
As good as Jim was on guitar, John was on drums. You know, and I'm not musically inclined enough to tell you if one was better than the other, or even if someone could make that decision. But I did learn doing he wanted to do an instructional video. And what I did learn about John in that process is that he wasn't just someone who, you know, like the rest of the guys, you know, with a teenager and they wanted to get in a little band and they started playing. He'd been on drums almost his entire life. And he knew it. I mean, like I said, he lived the rock and roll life, and he was the drinker, and he was a monster behind the drums. He plays the big kit, but then he could have quiet moments where he could explain what he was doing. He could technique and paradiddles and this, and, you know, he knew his stuff. Technically he knew what he was doing, and he could do it all on stage. So he wasn't a lot of people would see him as that character or caricature, and he had a lot more to him than that.
He played very short drum solos with us, but he really packed a lot of notes into the drum solos that he played with. He had a lot of chops. He had a lot of technical ability. He could play a lot of notes on the drums.
You know, for the most part, what I did, I mean, I was strong so I could carry stuff, but my main job when they played was to stay near the drum kit, because as Johnny played, he was so intense and so that he would knock pieces of his equipment over, and I would have to jump up on stage and reset things up while he was playing. I've never seen anybody hit harder on drums than him or play with more intensity than him. He played a double kick, and he would have it going consistently through the songs. He actually had the Zildjian Cymbal Company come out and watch him play, because he was breaking cymbals at such a rate that they thought he was throwing them out the window, because nobody was breaking cymbals like that, and he was breaking them that frequently. He also had a stack. He called it, I think it's China cymbal, I think he called it, and it was a stack of broken cymbals that he had. It was about this thick, and he would set it up and bang on it during shows.
The thing about Tonto was that he was so in love, or so close and so tight and so connected and so like one with Terry. You know what I mean? They were inseparable. He was on fire to get on the drums and show you how fast his hands were. If there was a drum set there and you didn't know how good he was, he would get on it and show you it right there in front of you, right there.
My favorite quality of Tonto was his loyalty to us as friends and as bandmates. He loved being in our band, and he was just such a good fit. The rest of us were all from the same neighborhood. He came from Jersey. So he really loved being part of our group, and he was really committed to it. And I love that part about him. I love his loyalty to our project. He lived for it.
He never had this, like, aggressive thing towards, like, you. He definitely had an aggressive nature that I liked. He had a way of, if you came in the room, he'd be like right after you, hey, what's going on? How you doing? He'd engage you. He wasn't the type of person to kind of really come down on you or try to make you feel bad about yourself about something. He had positive things to say.
Oh, what was Snidely Whiplash? Snidely Whiplash basically represents, it's kind of like adolescence, you know? Like a period of time where I grew an awful lot. I definitely recall there being a time there early on where, I mean, I was not even remotely close to what anybody would imagine would be the lead singer of the band. And I wouldn't try to do cover songs. The only thing I would try to do would be the few original songs that we did. And, you know, I didn't have a lot of confidence in what I was doing. I really didn't have a lot of confidence. And I definitely remember there being a time where it was like, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe this isn't the thing you should do. And I was like, no, I want to do this. So I had to work really hard to keep doing it and do it. And become the lead singer, the front man for the band. And be that guy that could handle being that guy, the front man of the band. And so it was a big growing period.
very special for me. Being in a band with my best friends, being young, being good, all of those things I felt like was a very magical few years. It ended a little sour, but I think that any musical group practically has that element to it where there's some sort of, because musicians are strong personalities and a lot of egos and there's clashing. That part of, I think, what makes, an artist is that they're very individualistic and that clashes with other people that are like that. So I think that that's part of it. But for me, being in a band with my friends, having that really special time that we were very popular, very good, young, free. I don't know. For me, very, very special period of time. Very, very glad I did it. I was so committed to it, and I tattooed it on my own skin. And, I kind of regret getting the tattoo, to be honest with you. Because it looks terrible now. You should see what it looks like.
Oh, yeah. Me, man, you start getting bigger, you start stretching these things out. It was a family. It was a family, and I think that's what it's special because it was a family, and it's one thing a bunch of musicians getting together and doing their thing, and they make hit songs and make money, whatever. But that wasn't us. That's not what we were. We were a bunch of guys that genuinely liked doing what we were doing. We genuinely liked the people we were doing it with, and there was some special times attached to it.
We shared some crazy adventures.
We shared a lot of crazy adventures.
Shared some adventures.
It was an incredibly fun time in my life. Being at that age and being able to have this sort of gang of friends where we got together and we all loved music and we loved to play music and we loved to work on music and write songs and then present those songs and play those songs to people. It just gave you a real, it sort of gave me a real purpose in my life at that time. It gave me a healthy thing to sort of focus on.
What Snidely Whiplash was to me was the first gestation of this flower that was inside of me that had to freaking blossom and grow because I just loved everything I heard.
Snidely Whiplash collectively was just my friend. All the members. It encapsulated a time, in my. What we're talking about 91, so it's my my early 20s. This is when we're becoming adults. Like I said, we were all young. We all had a lot of energy, and it was just fun. Going to gigs or, like you said, it was always a good time.
The first thing they were to me was watching my brother be something that he aspired to be. He was so good on stage and he had such a great stage presence, and he would get lost in the music and you could see it. So that was a big part of it for me. And then they were also a sign of what we were like at the time, what our group of people were like, what the kids that we hung out with were, and how much fun we were having. And we were all in our early 20s and late teens, early 20s, and the world was open in front of us and we were having a great time. And that's kind of what they embodied for me.
It's just, who was John Tonto to you?
Johnny was a loyal friend. He was a loyal friend. He was, he was the backbone of our band. He was sort of the circus act in our band that everybody wanted to see. But in the end, you could depend on him to have your back. Yeah, he was a loyal friend.
Well, he was our drummer. And I hate to put it in those terms, but that's what he was. He was the guy that, when the original Snidely Whiplash played, and we had Frage, there was an inadequacy there. I knew it. I think we all knew it. I think we all knew that there was an inadequacy, even though, like, when Freddie first joined us, we were all excited about that. I think that eventually we grew, and he didn't. And so when Tonto came about, that was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable because here now we had a really functioning band. We weren't just some joke band out of a garage that was going to play some party with a bunch of cover songs. We were going to play our stuff. You know, in a lot of ways, I think Johnny gave us our identity because we didn't have an identity before he came about. When he came about, all of a sudden, Snidely Whiplash started to have an identity.
You know, he's a friend that I miss. He's a friend that I miss because, you know, we were so tight musically at first that not being able to get together with him and jam again, you know, or you know, just let it loose or whatever, and you know, I don't know where like I'm going with it. I just think of Tonto, and it's
you know, he was somebody that, you know, and I said this, you know, when I texted Terry after he passed away, I said, you know, I feel very, like, fortunate to have had, you know, the opportunity to play with, you know, somebody of his caliber, you know. I mean, he was, like I said, he was a great guy. He was a real character. He had a real fiery personality, and he just brought a real energy. He brought a real energy to the band.
Yeah.
And that was really great.
John was interesting because he was like kind of two people at different times. One, he was the oldest one of us in the group. So he kind of had that, you know, he had kind of that experience thing going on for him. And, you know, you kind of had the sense that he, you know, in different situations he might know a little more. But then on the flip side, he could be as reckless as anybody and party as hard and be as stupid as a kid. And somehow he kept that balance. And he really, I think more than anybody, you can even tell after post Snidely and up until, you know, he couldn't perform anymore, is that just performing was everything to him. And I mean, at times they were living up in the middle of nowhere, Maine, and I'd still get together with him every few years, touch base, maybe see a show, and no, he was a great part of my youth, and continued into being a good friend over the years. And he was enjoyment. He was like taking a little vacation, even if it was just for the day to hang out. Because like I said, John was, if you were part of John's world, he made you feel special when you hung out. He loved spending time with you, and he made you feel that way.
I mean, he was more than just the guy in my brother's band. We had a nice friendship, he and I and Terry, and you know, for a few years there, we did a lot of stuff together. He trusted me to carry and set up his equipment, and you know, to make sure that it was done properly, and make sure that when he kicked stuff over, I would put it back where he needed it, and not just where it should, you know, where I thought it would be. And we had a good friendship. We did things together, separate from the rest of the band. So yeah, he was more than just that guy that played drums in my brother's band. He was a good friend.